Welcome to another episode of Romance Unleashed. My name is Mel, and today we have Timothy Janovsky in the house.
Thanks for having
Hey,
me.
thank you for coming.
Yeah, I'm excited to be
Can
here.
you tell us about the Santa hat?
Oh my gosh, about the Santa hat?
Yeah, please.
Well, okay,
Everything.
so the Santa hat that I'm wearing is a bit of a deconstructed Santa hat. This was the only one they had at the Ace Hardware when I was trying to do a photo shoot last year.
Okay.
And
It's like a ball.
it feels like the ball is dangling off the top of it, and I feel like this might have been a cat toy. I don't have a cat. I think this might have been like specifically a Santa hat for a cat owner, so that the cat could play with the end of the Santa hat. And unfortunately, I'm very allergic to cats.
I feel like your face would have not, like, if your cat
Oh,
was like,
yeah.
you know,
That's
like,
so true. My face would have gotten scratched up.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing it's just like an invisible hypothetical cat that I have.
yeah.
So that we don't have
that
to.
was
Yeah.
playing,
Yeah, that was playing with
touching
it.
on your beautiful vein.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I mean, it's a little bit of a little prop for me.
Do you love Christmas?
Yes. I love Christmas to the point that some people I don't fully believe the amount that I love Christmas. So I'm a December baby.
Okay.
So I like practically bleed red tinsel. When it comes like December 1st, I'm like so ready. In high school, I used to throw something for my friends. If you wanted to be part of the holiday gift exchange, you had to come to Christmas movie Fridays. Every Friday from Thanksgiving to Christmas, we would gather at my house and I would put out like a selection of DVDs that I had and we would like choose one. Everyone's looking at me like, okay. There was like, it was intense. Like it was intense to the point that like I even threw one birthday party where we did a 12 Days of Christmas scavenger hunt.
Okay.
So I hid like 4 calling birds, 3 French hens. Like I hid them around my house and people had to find them. And the team that like found the most of the 12 Days of Christmas like got special prizes, which were just mix CDs of my favorite Christmas songs.
Like from LimeWire?
Well, I think it was like, well, it was probably iTunes, but you know, yeah. But it was
legal.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was intense.
It's good.
It was intense. Yeah. So I have a bit of an obsession.
Do you still do 12 Days of Christmas?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, like I love a Christmas movie. I watch tons and tons of Christmas movies when it comes time for it. Used to be ABC Family Christmas movies back when ABC Family was still ABC Family and not Freeform. And then, you know, through my mom, I started watching like the Hallmark movies and the Lifetime movies. Now it's Netflix. Like anything that's Vanessa Hudgens, Lindsay Lohan, like give me all those movies. Chad Michael Murray this year.
Does he have one?
Yes, he's playing a stripper. Like they do an all-male like Santa review to save the town. I know. Can you imagine?
Save my town.
Yeah, save. Oh my God, exactly.
Like what?
Chad Michael Murray, like, ugh.
That was the first white boy I ever loved.
From Freaky Friday, or was there like a different?
I think it was from Cinderella
Story.
Cinderella Story. That's when I was like, maybe I do like white guys. Turns out I don't. But
okay,
you know,
I mean,
but there was one, and it was Chad Michael Murray.
I mean, he's so handsome that even Jamie Lee Curtis in Freaky Friday has a crush on him. She's like, that guy riding that motorcycle.
Oh. It's that like soft look. Like that, like that soft but like might choke you look.
He does have like a very like innocent looking face.
Yes.
But like a body that could crack you like a walnut. Yeah.
Thank you.
He's a nutcracker. Yeah. He would make a great nutcracker.
I love this for us.
She's like looking at like, I don't know. I'm just telling it like it is. He gave me the pink Moscato and now it's I've had 2 sips.
When you are writing, what do you like to drink?
Ooh, I mean, I'm a big coffee drinker. So like I'm from New Jersey originally, and shout out Central New Jersey, which is, some people don't think it exists, but it is my home area. They think it's either North Jersey or South Jersey or nothing, but Central Jersey is like, it has its own culture.
Okay.
And it has a coffee chain called Rook Coffee that I like absolutely love. Like people in this area are like obsessed with it. Like they have bumper stickers of it. And to the point that when I moved to Washington, D.C., my partner got me a coffee subscription to them. So they like mail us every month their ground coffee so that we can brew it at home.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'll have like 3 cups of that a day. So when I'm writing, I'm like, I'm in it. But if I'm writing a Christmas novel, it's gingerbread. They make gingerbread coffee. And I'll down that stuff like
that feels
it's
like
water.
It'd be like really good with Kahlua.
Yes. I have a little bit of a hard time with mixing alcohol and coffee because I had one bad experience in college that resulted in being ejected from a party. That really has colored me sour on any sort of coffee and alcohol combination.
How many of those did you have?
I'm going to plead the fifth on that one, actually. I'm not really sure how many I had, but I do know the only thing I ate that day was a pretzel dog. So really all went right to my head.
Yeah, good times.
Good times and then bad times and then funny times.
I've only had like an espresso martini, but there's something about like coffee and like dairy and alcohol that just like don't like, and I don't know if there's any dairy in the espresso martini, but I just feel like there is because it's like a weird
It's
color.
frothy.
Yeah. And I just like, I feel like my stomach wouldn't like it.
Yeah, and also like I think as humans, like we're not made to process dairy and we're not made to process alcohol. So it's just like marrying those two things. It's like your body's probably like,
Literally
we need to get rid of this immediately.
Yeah.
God. You're like, gotta get home. Sorry, guys.
So tell us what prompted you to start writing. When did you start writing?
Okay, so I started writing when I was probably like 12. I would write a lot of little fairy tale stories. I think definitely there were a lot of stories where like I was writing from the perspective of a princess, which I think very early on triggered my parents to being like, our child is gay, which, you know, exciting for everyone all around. And then I started writing like for realsies when I was probably like 16 because I was like, I was like a voracious reader, and I always had this dream of being like, I'm gonna write a novel, and it's gonna my name's gonna be on the cover, and that's gonna be like my big goal. And so I wrote a novel. I say it was like 40,000 words, and it was called Diaries of a Teenage Pop Star. It was basically based on a Disney Channel original movie. Like I was picturing it, like Vanessa Hudgens was going to star. It was going to be a whole thing. And from there, I just was like, I'm going to write another one, and it's going to be about theater and whatever. And my very loving and supportive parents connected me with someone that my dad worked with, whose spouse worked in educational publishing.
Okay.
And she was like, okay, well, it's so awesome that you wrote a novel. And she was like, if you want to have a real book, like you have to have an agent. Like, here's the steps you go through to get an agent. And so the summer before like my junior year of high school, I just like started sending out query letters to agents. Clearly, I had a very robust social life. That was, you know, I was really putting that on pause for my professional career.
Yeah. I mean, you like, is this one like 12 Days of Christmas stopped, or like were you able to keep up?
No, I was keeping up with that. Everything was still full steam ahead. I was just juggling a lot of things at the time. I was trying to have it all. I was doing school and everything, but
as you should.
But I basically like sent out so many query letters to the point that I finally got a response from one agent who had like passed my sample pages on to a junior agent at her office, who wrote me a letter. It was like, it's so impressive that you're 16, 17 years old. You wrote a novel. Here's like 18 things you should change to make this book better. We wish you so much luck on your journey to being a professional author. And me, being perhaps not of sound mind in that moment, wrote a letter back saying, thank you so much for all your feedback. Here's why I won't be doing any of those things. Yeah, and I got an email back from the head of the agency that was like, hi, come to my office on this date at this time. I would like to meet you. And it was in New York City. I grew up in New Jersey, so it wasn't super far. My dad was like, I'll drop you off there, but like she's probably gonna yell at you. Like I don't know what you expected from that or why you sent that. And I was like, well, you know, all the people on the internet who read my book, like I was on some fake version of Wattpad at the time. So I was like publishing chapters like on the go. And I was getting so much good feedback. I was like, well, if they like it, those are my readers. Like those are the only people I need to impress. Right. And so I walked into the office and the head of the agency like sat me down and she was like, I'd like to represent you. She said, I think you have spunk. She's like, I can teach you how to be a better writer, but I cannot teach you how to stand up for yourself in an industry that is just like littered with rejection.
Give me chills.
It was a weird, like so weird. Like I don't recommend this path to anyone trying to be an author. Like I think I got very lucky in that series of events because I think there was a version of that story where they were like, don't you ever do this again in a professional setting.
It's your restraining order.
Exactly. They were like, don't come within 20 feet of this office. Like never go into a bookstore. Like you're done. But that was like the very start. And for, I don't know, I want to say like 5 years, that office like took me under their wing and they gave me writing lessons. They taught me how to structure a chapter and what a good sentence structure is and things like that. And that just kind of jump started my whole career.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Do you keep in touch with them?
I do, less so than I used to.
Have you sent them your books?
Yes, I did. I sent them my books, especially my first 2 books, as thanks because the seeds of those books were in like earlier works that we had worked on together.
Okay.
And so I'm very grateful to them. And I think there's so many people you meet along the way to becoming an author that like even if they teach you one thing, and even if it's through rejection, they are so integral to building the author or the writer that you become. I'm sure you can attest to that by being an entrepreneur. Like there's just like people along the way, even if they're giving you rejection or like they're criticizing you, you're taking something and that's actually building you into a better version of what you're aspiring to be, which I don't know. It makes me excited.
Yeah. I agree. I also think, I mean, yes, it could have turned out bad, but anytime someone asks me for advice, I always say, like, the worst someone can say is no.
Yeah.
Just shoot your shot. Like, the worst someone can tell you, as long as it's legal, right? Like, all that they can tell you is reject you or tell you no. Okay, you pick back up and you figure out how to do it better or how to approach it a different way. And I think sometimes the fear of that no is what holds so many people back.
Oh my gosh.
So I feel like that's like what that agent saw in you. They were like, so many people stopped right there. Like that could have been the end of it. And you were like, no, actually, my book is fucking great. And
it was really bad. Like, I mean, it was like objectively, I will say now, like very bad. But like to the point that I just like it gave me a lot of perspective. And I think also to the same token that like it helped me to build a thicker skin, like that when I believe something is right, because it is my work, it is my voice, it is my name on the cover of the book, that like I need to be able to stand behind that.
Yeah.
And I think like whenever I come across a challenge like that now, I like try to summon that 17-year-old who like was so, let's say, cautiously optimistic about the world that everything was going to work out. And sometimes I have to say like, no, that's actually what I meant to say and how I want to say it. And I'm going to stand behind that.
Right. That's awesome. Especially because I think as we get older and we have more to lose, we become more afraid of using our voice and like standing for what we believe in, whether that's our writing or whatever we're doing, because we're like, especially in this industry, right? Like, oh, if that person's pushing back, like maybe I shouldn't push back because where can that take my career, right? So I think that that's like really important to just like hold your own, so you can keep your voice, because that's what makes the book so special.
Yeah, and I think because selling books, writing books, things like that, it's such a cultural industry. Like it is an industry that is about connection and community and building community through fiction. I think there's just like a level of being able to know who you are as a person and being willing to share that authentically, because I think the act of writing a book, but I would even say like the act of recommending a book, right, to someone is really vulnerable, right? Because you're basically saying like, hey, this is my favorite book. It's like, that's telling me something about you when I open the pages of that book. And like, while my characters are fictional, they're not based on real people. They do. I had a writing instructor who once told me that like real life is the starter dough for fiction. And so like everything that you experience, everything that you internalize through conversation and experience and all that stuff becomes little nuggets in the things that you create. So every time someone opens a book of mine, like whether I like it or not, they are learning a little bit something about how my brain works, what I'm thinking about the world, what scares me, what keeps me up at night, you know, things like that.
And even though it's a fictional story, like that's could very much be someone's real experience. So
yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to the North Pole specifically, but
I mean, unless you believe in Santa.
Exactly, which we all do. So I think that's really how we should approach the conversation. You could absolutely go to the North Pole.
Okay.
I actually did for a time before becoming a published author. I was still writing. I entertained a brief career of being an actor, like which is also one of those things that's like, oh, you really have to hold your own in one of those things. And I played a dancing elf aboard a Polar Express show. It was like a real train, like a moving train that we were performing on. So I've been to the North Pole.
Exactly.
I know all about the North Pole.
Someone's real
experience. Exactly. So I basically did.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I based this book entirely on real experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why romance?
Derailed. Why romance?
Yeah.
Ooh. I think because for the longest time when I started writing, I was always writing these stories. I started writing YA actually, and I was always writing these stories that had a straight protagonist and a gay side character. And I never gave the gay side character any sort of romantic interest, any sort of like real, true page space. And I had a writing mentor in my early stages of trying to become a published author that was like, kind of seems like the character you're most interested in is like the queer characters that you put on the side. Like, do you ever think you'd write about them? And I was like, no, like, I'm never going to do that. Like, no, I'm not. They're not. We're not. But as soon as I came into my own and I came out and I started, exploring queer community and things like that, I realized that there were not a lot of romances that represented me, the people that I know and the way that I love, specifically. And so, as someone, especially who grew up on a diet of like Nora Ephron or even those like cheesy made for TV Christmas movies, I was like, where's the diversity? Where is the intersectionality? Where is the love stories that feel like the people that I know and that I love? And so I really, really wanted to write stories that felt like they celebrated the kind of love that I was kind of dreaming about myself. Because in reading a straight romance, I usually had to read between the lines, which I think most marginalized people learn how to do very early.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of becomes like just like second nature. Like you're just like, oh, well, like, and I think I talk about this a lot when I started like my book reviewing journey that like led me here. I was never like intentional about my reading because I just always kind of like, oh, well, I can like, I picture myself in these books. I know that they're not, I know they're white people, but like I picture me in them because there's nothing else. Like,
Yeah.
And then when you start reading books that are written specifically for you about your identity, there's like a power like no other, I think, to like, you're like, oh, that's so different from like reading in between the lines to try to make a character fit who you are than like reading a character that's you.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time you experienced that?
Mm. No.
No. I mean, I think I'm just so curious. I'm always curious when people say that as well, because like I remember being probably pretty late high school, but when I read Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda for the first time, and Becky Albertalli wrote that book from such a place of emotional honesty that I read that book, and it was the first time that I was like, oh, he's a mess.
Yeah.
Like he's real. Like because any sort of like YA queer fiction that I'd read up until that point was very cutesy. It was very like demure, cutesy, whatever. And Simon comes out and is like cursing on the page, is making bad choices, is learning from his mistakes. And I was like very much doing those things. And I was like, oh, I'm not alone in those thoughts. And I think sometimes like the feeling of trying to make someone through fiction feel less alone is just like such a beautiful and valid way to storytell.
Yeah.
I don't know. I remember reading that book, and I actually tweeted at Becky Albertalli back when Twitter was still a thing and not a trash fire. And she tweeted back and was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for reading. I'm so glad you see yourself in it. And then like years later, she was like holding my book.
That's amazing. It's like full circle.
I know. It was really one of those things where I was like, oh, she knows I exist.
Did you find like the tweet and then the picture of her and like, you should make it like a carousel?
I wish I could. I like in the bowels of the internet somewhere that tweet exists.
Yeah.
But would I be able to find it now? No. Yeah. I'd have to hire someone. Yeah. I'm sure someone could find it.
Probably better.
Probably better than leave it buried. Yeah, actually.
Yeah. Don't go looking for the old Twitter.
Yeah. My devil high school Twitter that was just like memes and photos of Nick Jonas. Like, we don't need that.
I get like the Facebook reminders of like what you said 12 years ago or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so cringe. Who let me on the internet? Let's delete it now.
I know. And even if you delete it now, Facebook's still going to be like, just guess what? One more time. We're going to show it to you. Are you sure? And you're like, yes, I'm very sure. I don't want to see that photo of me doing Chubby Bunny with the marshmallows. Like, thank you. It was funny at that one party one time. It's not funny now. Thanks.
Yeah. Like, please don't bring it back up.
Yeah.
Did your family always know you were writing romance?
I think my family was very aware that I was interested in, because I was reading a lot of Becky Albertalli. I read a lot of like Jennifer E. Smith. I read a lot of YA romance when I was young. And so I think they like had a pretty strong idea that that's where I was like leaning towards. And I like had a vision that my debut was going to be a YA novel. And like we got pretty close at one point and I was like, oh, this is so exciting. But when 2020 hit, and I couldn't go on auditions. I lost my job. Like I was home alone. And I was like, what's the thing that brings me the most comfort? And I was like, these old Christmas movies that I used to watch with my family, specifically ones from 2007, 2008. They're so cringe now, but they are so fun. There are two of them on ABC Family. One's called Snow Globe, where Christina Milian literally gets trapped in a snow globe. Bananas. And then the other one is Melissa Joan Hart and Mario Lopez in a movie called Holiday in Handcuffs. You've seen it. You're aware of it.
I have to have, because I can clearly picture both of them.
Yeah, where she basically takes him at gunpoint and brings him to family Christmas, like in fuzzy handcuffs. And she's like, this is my boyfriend. He's doing a little act that he's been kidnapped. And like the whole family's just like, great, welcome to Christmas. And he can't call for help. He can't walk for miles to find help. Like it, and then they fall in love. I don't know. So bananas.
Of course they do.
Of course they do. But in that movie, her brother is gay. And that was like the first time that I had watched one of those movies that I saw like a gay person in that story. And I was like, oh, I kind of want to know what that character was thinking. How do I make a story that centers a queer character in the same Christmas tropes? And so during 2020, I just was like, every day I'm going to sit down and write 2,000 words towards what eventually became You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince. And I don't think I was setting out to write a romance. I think I just like happened to write one. Mm-hmm. And when we went to sell the novel, they were like, this is a new adult romance novel. And I was like, really? And I had been reading romance. It's not like I hadn't been reading it. And especially once COVID hit, I was like reading, really foraying into adult romance. Yeah. So I was internalizing the tropes without even knowing it. But at the same time, I don't think it was my intention, but it definitely was like my subconscious goal. Mm. I was like, this is a love story. It's a romance. It has a happy ending.
I love that for you.
Thanks.
What is the next thing that you're working on?
Ooh, okay. So my next book that is going to come out is called Once Upon You and Me. It is a Harlequin novel, so it's a spicy age gap romance.
Oh, man, age.
Mm. It is about a single dad who...
Oh, please, like, devour me right now.
He runs a fairy tale inspired resort in the Catskills, and he is going to host his daughter's Sweet 16 there. And his ex-wife decides to put business over family and sends her personal assistant in her place to like get all the preparations together. And through some happenstance, they end up having to share a house together. And so this like
proximity. I mean,
this surfer twink and this bear single dad end up into their own kind of spicy bedtime story romance. It was originally called Not Your Father's Fairy Tale. So like if you want to internalize what that might be like, that's the kind of story it is.
I love that for you. When is that coming out?
It will be out in April of 2025.
Oh wow. Yeah. We're on the corner.
I know.
Like basically like we're like a hop and a skip away from 2025.
I know. I really even can't even believe that. I mean, and of course I would love to put like a slow-mo on those last couple months, because I love the Halloween through Thanksgiving through Christmas. Like if I could just like extend that time period for a full year, I think I would like love to live in those 3 months.
I agree. This is like my favorite time. Well, kind of. Like I used to love the summer, but now that I'm back in Florida, I'm like, fuck the summer. Like please just like take me back to cooler times. Like, I'm like my boob understud is under. I'm like, I can't do it.
You're like, I just need a break.
Yeah.
I also think there's just something about like cooler weather that makes you want to like cuddle up with a book and your favorite drink and like your favorite people. Like summer is like, please don't touch me.
Yeah.
I'm so hot.
Yeah,
I'm
like,
so sorry. Don't be in my space.
Like I don't want to cuddle like maybe a toe, like toe to toe touching. That's it. Like that's all we're getting, because
toe to toe. I love that. Yes. That should be the next like romance trope. It should be like, we just touch toes. It's like the pinky touch. Like I think that's a trope, but now it's toes.
Right. Yeah. It like, and it has to be said in like summer Florida 102-degree weather.
102-degree weather.
People can understand why like
they can only touch toe.
Yeah, toe to toe.
Exactly.
I mean, they can touch everywhere else, but like at post event or toe to toe.
Absolutely. But, I love it.
You gotta. Anyway,
I'm gonna find a way to put it.
Tell us about the Merriest Misters. What inspired the story?
Okay, so The Merriest Misters is about Patrick and Quinn. They are a newly married couple. They've just bought their first house. They are tasked with hosting Christmas dinner, much to Quinn's chagrin. And on Christmas Eve night, they think there has been a burglary. And so Patrick frying pans the intruder, only to find out that it is Santa Claus. He rage quits, and in order to save Christmas, the two of them have to board the sleigh and deliver the rest of the gifts to the rest of the world. But instead of being brought back to New Jersey at the end of the night, they're brought to the North Pole and told that if they don't take on the roles for the next year, the following year's Christmas will be permanently canceled. So they decide, even though they're going through a rough patch, that like maybe the North Pole and some magic will fix all their marriage troubles. And weirdly enough, the book was inspired by Doug Emhoff, Vice President Kamala Harris's husband, because during the 2020...
I have many questions.
Oh my gosh, ask the questions first. I want to know what you're thinking.
How did we get here?
How did we get here? Cool. So firstly, Doug Emhoff is from Mattawa, New Jersey, which is where I grew up.
Okay.
And so when I found that out, I was like, oh, we have like kind of like a kinship here. Like we're a little...
Is that him?
Is that Doug Emhoff?
Yeah. Is that supposed to be him?
I mean, no, but I mean, in a way,
okay.
It is kind of him. So what I was excited about was when President Joe Biden was elected and Vice President Kamala Harris took office, I would see all these photos of Doug Emhoff with her. And I was thinking to myself, like, what must it be like to be a person holding a role that has been historically held by a person of a different gender? And I knew I was going to write another Christmas novel, and I knew I wanted it to have magic in it. And I was just trying to toy with a lot of stuff. And I got this like idea that made me laugh, which was like, what if a queer couple became like a married couple became Santa and Mrs. Claus? Like, what would it be like if a person who identified as a man walked into a closet of like stodgy velvet dresses with little bonnets and little kitten heels? Like, what would he do in that moment? Right. Because we don't see Doug Emhoff out here in the pearls and the whatever.
Right.
So, I mean, he's cycling with his gay friends. So, I mean, you know, whatever. But
almost there.
Almost there. So I just like, I that kind of idea made me laugh. And so The Merriest Misters was born of that because Quinn becomes the North Pole's first Merriest Mister. And it's kind of about his journey through gender expression and how he takes on the role of being married and what being married means and how there are like heteronormative ideals put onto queer folk when they're in a marriage, because like they think like someone's the man and someone's the woman and someone does this and someone does that. And I was just Doug Emhoff just kind of kicked off this whole how did I get from point A to point B? I stopped at a lot of stations along the way. Let me tell you. Well, that's what I was thinking. I said, you know, someone was like, we got to get you on the campaign trail with them.
Yeah.
Like,
we got to tag them right now.
I know. I'm like, I mean, I'm manifesting President Kamala Harris, and I'm like, also that would do great things for my book sales. You know what I mean? Yeah, not only for the country, but for my book sales. Like, right? Like she would literally do great things for the country, but also
but
my book sales. Right, exactly. I think that's why she's running.
Steamy Lip Bookstore. I mean,
yeah, exactly. And you buy it at the Steamy Lip Bookstore. Yeah. You're supporting the local economy. You're supporting small business.
And Florida, who has all of these stupid laws, like exactly, we got to show them.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, we got to get her here.
We're gonna make social media. We're gonna make a little video.
Oh my gosh, I'm completely ready. And I would love to meet Kamala Harris because I think she is like a very impassioned speaker. I think she stands for a lot of very strong issues. I like personally though really do want to meet Doug Emhoff. Like I do feel like we would be good friends.
Besties.
Of course that's me projecting, right? We'd probably meet and he'd be like, I don't want anything to do with you actually.
No.
But
I mean,
I don't know.
Whole books inspired by him.
Exactly.
Like,
so
kind of forced.
I maybe feel like he would appreciate that. Maybe he'll listen to it while he's cycling, the audiobook.
They could. Okay, so we have an audiobook walking club.
Ooh.
But what if they create an audiobook cycling club?
I love that.
I mean, hello, Doug.
Wouldn't that be a great way to do a book club too?
Yeah.
Because so now in your walking club, do you all read the same book or you can just read whatever you want?
You read whatever you want.
Wouldn't that be interesting if you did a cycling class though to like a communal audiobook and everyone like during the first sex scene, it's like, okay, mountain climbers, ladies. Like we're all like, you know what I mean? Peloton needs to get on that.
Oh my God.
Could you imagine like listening to like a really steamy romance novel while you're doing a workout? Like, I feel like you would be like, oh my gosh, next time.
Like,
yeah.
You got to ride. So you got to
ride. You know? Yeah, exactly. And you'd be like, the next time I'm going to do it, like I'm going to look so snatched. Like, you know what I mean?
It's
motivation.
Cody. I think Cody would be in on this. Cody, if you're listening to this, or if you ever listen to this, we have audiobooks for you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Ride really hard too.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Honestly, I feel like we've just cracked the code on something that's not yet been tapped.
I think that we're gonna help the economy.
Oh my gosh, exactly.
And a lot of people's just happiness in general.
Oh my gosh, the ride of endorphins that you're gonna get.
Ride of endorphins.
It's gonna be amazing.
Let's go.
Let's go. Yeah, I love that.
Someone put our Moscato.
Yeah, I know, really. I'm like, I only drink half of this. But it is delicious.
So tell us, have any of your real life dating experiences been part of any of your books? Any like anecdotes?
Interesting. Ooh, that's a spicy question. Can't think of any specific ones that snuck in there. I mean, this is like maybe evading your question, but I am very much someone who I was actually talking to someone today and I was like, full disclosure, like I do write fiction. They like basically disclosed their whole life story to me. And I was like, everything about that is like truly amazing. And I probably will take pieces of it and put it in a fiction. You'll have a different name, you'll live in a different state, you'll have a different whatever, but like this meet cute that you just, the drama, like I will be taking it. I once went to, happened into like an after concert after party with the act that was performing during the concert and got into a conversation with like a real British nanny. Like she had been trained, brought over from the UK to become a nanny to like very wealthy, very powerful American families in New York City. And the stories she had, like truly just, I was like, we walked away from the conversation. My partner was like, you asked her so many questions. I was like, first of all, that's how you have a conversation. I said, second of all, little did she know, she was giving me so much material
Books
are just going to be about nannies. I was like so super excited, but like
that's what daddy, a single dad and a nanny.
And a nanny. I love those stories.
Me too.
I just think there's like, I will pick up on things sometimes, like in You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince. I once was in a Barnes & Noble where I overheard a woman at Christmas time on the phone where she was like, oh my God, I was just at the post office and it was like the Smithsonian of brown boxes in there. And I just thought that was like the weirdest way to phrase like, wow, there were a lot of boxes. Like she just had to like say it like that. And I was like, I wrote it down in my notes app and I was like, I'm going to use that. My last Harlequin novel is called You Had Me at Happy Hour. And when I first got my first book deal, we did a virtual, it was during COVID. I got my first book deal on the day of Joe Biden's inauguration. I had COVID for the first time. I was in COVID. I'm sorry.
Very eventful.
Oh my gosh, I know. I literally was like in COVID isolation. Like, so I like could not leave my room. I was on day like 3. I found out I got a book deal and I was miserable. And my soon-to-be editor was like, let's do a virtual happy hour. And someone on the book team was like, great, you had me at happy hour. And I was like, I will be taking that.
Yeah.
Like, and I just put it in a note somewhere. And like 2 years later, I was like, oh, remember when I read that in an email? Like, it's time to bring that out of the vault. So I do definitely take things. And I would venture a guess that a lot of the romance in my stories is inspired by like real life things that have happened to me. Like, Never Been Kissed is set in a drive-in movie theater. Like my partner lives like a stone's throw away from North America's longest operating drive-in movie theater. Like I was there and was like, this is so romantic. You know what I mean? So I decided to like build a whole book around that. But I don't think any of my like actual dating escapades have ever like landed on the page. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't believe you.
I don't.
You're looking at me like, I don't believe you. Yeah. Well,
if you need inspo, I'm so.
Oh. I
that fucking shit show.
Was having a conversation recently with some friends in New York who were telling me about. So I've been with my partner for almost 7.5 years, and so I haven't been on Hinge. I don't think I was actually ever on Hinge, but like I'm not up to date on the dating app culture, other than like what I researched when I'm writing a book, and I'm like, hey, like, can I borrow your phone? Just swipe for a little bit just to see what it's like. And someone recently was talking to me, and they were like, oh my God, it's like so rough out there that I actually figured out how to cheat the system. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, on Hinge, what you can actually do is that like they hide all the hot people behind a paywall. And I said, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Like, wouldn't the hot people get really mad that they're not getting any matches? They were like, no, wait, it decides what you like. Like it through the algorithm figures out what you like and only hides the people that they know you'll like. But you can cheat it by changing your location to a city like across the world, getting the deck there, waiting 10 minutes, and then changing your location back to the city you're in, it reshuffles the deck and it basically forgets who you liked because you didn't do the swiping in the other city. I was like, oh my gosh, now you have to be a tech genius just to get a date?
Wow. But they do hide, like, I guess, like a different caliber, you feel like, of people behind this like paywall. And they give you like 1 rose a week that you can use towards like one of these people that is like curated for you.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's not.
It's not a great system.
No.
I don't feel like it fosters like something that I love about romance novels is that like there's that form of escapism that exists only in a romance novel where it's like that banter is like firing on all cylinders from page 7. You know what I mean? Like, can you do that on Hinge? Like, I feel like an opening line is just going to come across a little flat.
Yeah, so I think it depends like what your prompts are. Like mine used to be really dry and then I was like watching some TikToks and then they had like funny things of like, so I've like incorporated some of those and sometimes you'll get like funny replies and you're like, okay, like I can banter with this person. I think probably the worst pickup line I've ever gotten was like it was that nurse that was like, I see COVID hasn't taken you out, so can I? And I was like,
No, 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 no. No, 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 no.
I was like, sir.
That's okay, truly. And he was a nurse?
Yes. He was some kind of medical professional. He had his pictures in scrubs. And I was like,
Maybe it was a Halloween costume.
something. I was like, my God.
That feels a little out of left field. Like that's like
that was too much.
yeah.
And I was like, you know what? We're gonna match X on this.
Oh.
That's wild. That's a wild line.
That's a little too far.
Yeah.
I do think that there's like, especially in romance novels now, like there is like kind of an impetus that like if your characters start the novel single, that like you have to face the reality that they were using dating apps because we just live in a culture that like everyone's on them. And so like I thought it was so interesting that like I kind of have like a I'm not going to ask you, don't tell me policy with people in my life where it's like, I'm not going to ask you if you read my book. If you read it and you want to talk to me about it, like ask me if I'm willing to do that first. Cause there's some spicy things in my books that, you know, I'm like, I don't want to know that my parents read that. But to the point that like, I think it's so funny that like in the fake dating game, I made a joke about poppers. Then, you know, I got like it's like, what are poppers? I'm like, well, we're not going to have that conversation, actually. I'm so sorry. Remember the rule that I instated? Or like, I mean, not that that has anything to do with dating, but like, in You Had Me at Happy Hour, I make some jokes. They talk about using Grindr as like a thing. It's like, then you open up these conversations. It's like, then I had to Google what Grindr was. It's like, I don't think you needed to Google it. I think we could have remained ignorant. I think that would have been good.
We need to just stop talking about it right now. You know,
we just have the little, somebody inputs the little, which is probably proprietary. So actually don't use that.
And Ryan is interesting because like you do see some like very famous people like you're like, what?
Yeah.
But Raya only gives you like so many matches in a day. So it's better than like the doom scrolling that you can go through in Hinge where you're just like X, you know. So they give you like a couple, I think maybe 2 or 3 like batches that like, so that's a little better, but like no one replies on Raya. And I was like, I get it, everyone's fucking busy. Like obviously the people who are here all have like some kind of job that like keeps you busy, right?
Sure.
But like then why are you fucking here if you're not replying?
Yeah.
Like,
and that one's super exclusive, right? Like you have to do the application and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it took me like a year and a half or 2 years to get off the wait list. And you have to like be vetted by like so many people that are on the app.
Oh my gosh, that's like applying to college.
Yeah, literally.
That's so strange.
Like I'm like, I just want dick. Like I don't understand why. Like,
you're like, I don't understand why I have to jump through 7 hoops.
Like, are we vetting STD panels? Because we're not. Like, it should really be this exclusive.
Right. Like, that's so strange. Yeah. I also think that like there's definitely something to be said about like the worlds we create in romance novels are very much of this idea that like there's limited choice, right? Because right now, I think in modern times where we're using dating apps, we live in a culture of like a million options and no one option's ever going to be the right option. I was just recently, I read, it's called Disney High. And it's an unauthorized tale of basically like the rise and fall of Disney Channel. And it starts with Hilary Duff and it ends with Demi Lovato. And the thesis of this book was basically that like, we will never have this again. millennials were the chosen generation that got this one nostalgic thing that they got to take with them because we still had the tail end of a monoculture where like children had like 3-4 channels to choose from, and that was the programming you could pick. But now kids can go back and watch literally any TV show from the last 40 years. They could watch what's new, what's old, what's streaming, what they buy, what they like. I mean, I still remember having to like keep continuously calling my Blockbuster being like, do you have the Lizzie McGuire movie?
Right.
Do you have the Lizzie McGuire movie? Do you?
Great movie.
Such an excellent film. I spent a semester in Italy when I was in college, and my partner came to visit me.
You're like, Paolo.
Yeah, well, we went to a city called, well, we went to Rome, so that was already very Lizzie McGuire. But then we went to a smaller city called Tivoli, which is known for its famous fountain gardens. And we got there on this day, and I didn't really know this yet, but like I'm building to a big reveal. We get there, it had rained so much that they were like, we can't turn the fountains on. They'll flood. I was like, kidding? Like we came for the famous fountain gardens. And then we kind of start walking around for a little while, and we're like, oh, all right, well, we've seen it. They're not on, but whatever. Then all of a sudden, like the sun comes out, and we start hearing a little trickle of water. And I was like, are those the fountains? And then one at a time, all the fountains came on. And I looked down this long alley, and if I don't know how many times you've seen the Lizzie McGuire movie. Oh, okay. I mean, it's upwards of 10 for me at this point, I'm sure. But there's like a montage where Lizzie and Paolo are rehearsing for the big European Music Awards, and they're running through a fountain garden. It was that fountain garden. And I had my partner take a video of me running through the fountain garden because I was like, this is where Lizzie and Paolo ran.
I'm watching Lizzie McGuire tonight.
You should. Oh my God. So good.
Like, I need to.
And I learned in this book too that it was like based on like a French art house film.
Really?
Yeah. They were like, oh, it's a movie where like she had an animated subconscious. And they were like, we could do that for kids.
Yeah.
Like, how strange. But then again, you know what I mean? Like, I took the Santa Claus and was like, I gotta put my gay little romance hands all over that. So, you know, you can really just retell things in new packages in a way that speaks to new audiences or different generations of people.
Yeah. I think that's the beautiful thing about like books and writing, and like the creativity that each author brings to like millions of people are writing the same trope, but it's never the same book.
Yeah. What I really love, I read a memoir recently. It was also a writing craft book, kind of, by Daniel Handler. And he was talking a little bit about how so many like writing instructors or literary communities are like, there's a canon, right? Like, you need to read these 100 books before you die, like whatever. And he was like, I don't believe in that. He's like, I believe in your personal canon. It's the things that you imprint on very early. And they're probably weird and obscure and whatever, but they bring you nostalgia, they bring you comfort. And what you're actually doing is like, you're kind of mishmashing the like 7 to 10 things that you really deeply loved as a kid unapologetically, and creating that over and over and over again to uncover something that you didn't know before. And I was like, oh,
I need to talk to my therapist about this.
Right? Like, I was literally like, I'm thinking back on all the things that like, I was like, oh yeah, I wrote Your Amin when Matthew Prince because I imprinted on Holiday in Handcuffs when I was like 12 or whatever it was. And I like needed to see that through. I have a book coming out for next Christmas. It's called A Mannequin for Christmas. And it is about a mannequin that comes to life. And I'm like, I was obsessed with Life Size. I was obsessed with Mannequin. Like, these were little things that I just like could not get out of my head because they were so out of pocket. They were so wacky and whimsical and whatever that I just like was like, what drew me to that? So then I get to like play inside that little world with my own tropes, my own characters, my own magic systems. And then I'm like, oh, this was the thing that I was trying to find in that other piece of work that someone else made. And they were also trying to find something in that piece of work that they made. It's like, oh.
It's like a never ending cycle.
It's like we're all playing one long game of telephone.
That's pretty cool.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And
I think there's just like a world where like, this is like the weirdest thing that has happened to me since becoming a published author. But like, I wrote Never Been Kissed in the throes of the pandemic. And I wrote it on contract, which was like the first book that I ever wrote with like a firm deadline. I knew it was going to be a published book, so I really knew it had to be good. So I wrote it about this drive-in. It's a real drive-in. It's based in Orfield, Pennsylvania. And it's an amalgamation of a lot of different drive-ins, but that was the one that I was mostly physically like inspired by. Like, that's what Wiley's drive-in in the book looks like. And so actually during my second bout of COVID, after I went to Christmas Con, after Matthew Prince came out, I got a DM from a person on Instagram that said, hi, my really good friend is a bookstagrammer who read Your Amin when Matthew Prince and recommended that I read it for Christmas. I went to my local library. The copy that they had was checked out. but they said we have his first book, Never Been Kissed. Would you like to read that instead? And she was like, I just needed something to read at work. And like, I did not even look at the back cover. She was like, I looked at the front cover and like literally thought it was about racing
Yeah.
because there's cars on it.
Right.
And then she's like, so color me surprised. I'm sitting at the admissions booth in the snow at the drive-in that I just purchased with my partner. And I'm reading the description of this drive-in in the book. And I'm thinking, wait, am I there? Like, it was basically like, is this fucking play about us?
Right.
And she was like, I have to know, is your book based on Shankweiler's Drive-In? I was like, yes. And she was like, I own it. And she's like, and how weird that I'm reading this book. We literally just purchased it. We decided to keep it open all year because we needed to turn a profit to pay. And she was like, I found myself in the middle. And she was like, you know what the funniest thing was? And she was like, I was trying to avoid thoughts of drive-in movie theaters because I was like, we just made this massive investment. It might not work out. I'm hoping for the best. And she's like, but then I read your story and I actually felt really good. And now we're friends. She hosted a Nora Ephron movie night there for me once. Like, it just was like the weirdest, coolest thing that like books can create community that you didn't even know you wanted. Friendships you didn't even know you could have. I got to go to the Eras tour last year because I complained on my bookish Instagram, and a bookstagrammer that I had come to an event of mine that I had like made a connection with was like, hey, I'm actually selling an extra ticket if me and another bookstagrammer are going, if you maybe want to. And now we're like great friends. We like went to the tour together. We text all the time. We send memes. Like it really is so weird that like books are this form of connection that like it's basically like, I don't know, like sending out personal ad.
Right. I think it's like it alludes to like what you said earlier about like how personal like book recommendations are and just like books in general are, because I feel like you could really see something in that person that like maybe you wouldn't have been able to get through just the surface.
Oh, absolutely. And social media, especially like in the way that it can connect readers and authors and booksellers and bookstores and things like that. It's like we do want to project a very like beautiful, polished, exciting version of ourselves. But when we recommend books, when we write books, when we do stuff like that, it's like it's a lot harder to cover that stuff up because I think you're not even aware you're doing it for the most part. And I think sometimes like I'll get tagged in reviews where people are like, especially with like You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince, where they'll say like, I really hated this character at the beginning. And I think a lot of times there are these levels of like, well, maybe he just has some selfish tendencies that like I share, you as the reader share, and you're identifying with something that you're not really comfortable with yourself about. And you're like, oh, I don't like that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, there's like reading requires self-reflection.
Right. Absolutely.
Which I think is just like, it's almost like its own form of therapy, right? You're holding up a mirror to different qualities, different situations, different choices, and saying like, would I do that? Would I have made a different choice? Have I made that choice? How did I get out of it? There are a lot of questions to be asked.
Yeah. And I think especially then like when you see the character arc, right? If you were coming up against something at the beginning, seeing that person like grow or overcome is like so moving for you. It's like it's definitely a form of therapy, I would say.
Yeah. And I think just knowing that even knowing, especially in a romance novel, that every romance novel ends with a happily ever after, it gives you reassurance that we're always going to leave that character better than we found them.
Right. Yeah.
So
I love that.
I love that too.
What trope have you not written that you would love to write?
I would really love to write a marriage of convenience novel. I think the marriage of convenience trope is so interesting to me because like I kind of started exploring marriage as an idea in the Merriest Misters because we meet this couple married. They think they have everything. They have the house, they have the rings. Like this should have solved all our problems and it didn't. And so I was curious, like what happens after the happily ever after? But I didn't get to really explore like what's that like what if we like remove love and dating from the equation? What if these two people are really just in it for like the business transaction? I'm just like very curious about that situation because like marriage as an institution seems to be like, I wouldn't say it's archaic, but I would say that like a lot of millennials and Gen Z don't like treat it as like that crux of success anymore that previous generations did. And so I'm like really excited for this like upcoming generation of romance writers to start playing in those tropes too, because I think there's like cultural and like sexual politics that are at play that are like really skew that trope in a really fun way. I don't know how I would do it yet, which is why I haven't touched it. But one day, I hope I can.
What's a trope you would never write?
I mean, this is maybe cheating, but I was going to say accidental pregnancy. But that's only because, like, biologically, that's not possible between two people who were born male. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just think that there is I when it's done well, it's done really well. And maybe I could find a way to do it. Maybe I could create some sort of
It could be
loophole for
like
that.
that movie with Jennifer Aniston where her best friend switches out the sperm.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, like maybe something like that. Like he was drunk, he was being stupid. Now there's an accidental pregnancy.
Yeah, that's very possible. I mean,
I hate pregnancy tropes, so like, whatever. But
yeah, I
I'm
mean,
here for ideas. So.
it's so interesting too because like I love the single dad trope,
Mm,
but when it comes to stories that like revolve around like building a family and stuff like that, like it's not something that's like a priority to
yeah.
me or something that maybe I envision for my future. So I like have a hard time like creating characters that also want that. But I also think it would be it would be a unique challenge for me to maybe see it through a different lens. So like maybe I should do it. Maybe
Yeah.
that's one of the next things that I try just to explore a new avenue of thinking.
Fuck, marry, kill.
Okay.
It's usually tropes. I wanted to make it harder, but we'll do tropes.
Okay.
Okay. What tropes would you fuck, marry, kill?
Oh, okay. Well, I really love an only one bed, which is cheating, but that's fuck. That is cheating, but that's fuck. Marry. Oh God. I really, really love forced proximity. Like any book where they're either like forced to work together, trapped together, have to share a roof. Like I love that. Handcuffed together, held at gunpoint because they're being charted to family Christmas. And if I had to kill a trope, oh gosh. I mean, I don't say this from a reader standpoint because I think when it's done well, it's done really, really well. But I think childhood friends to lovers is so you don't agree with me. I have to kill it. And I have to kill it because
Yeah,
a lot
why,
of times
Timothy?
because I think sometimes I know. Well, okay. So I think I recently read A Love Like the Sun by Riss M. Nelson, and that book made me cry, and I thought it was beautifully done. And now I feel like it's ruined for me, right? Like I don't want to read another book with that trope in it because like she did it right. Like I just feel like there's a level of like if you have this much history with a person and you've gone that much time without confessing your feelings, like
you're both idiots.
Yeah, and you have to give me a really good reason why now is the reason that you're going to confess that. And I just don't always, I'm not always willing to board the train of suspension of disbelief that I need to get there.
I hear that because I feel like with, to your point, like, did y'all have feelings for each other the whole time y'all were pursuing relationships with other people? Because then, like, what?
And then it just feels disingenuous about those relationships you were having with other people. And like, that's just, and you know, I mean, obviously you want to come at it from an open-minded lens and you want to believe that like love is an unlimited resource. You can have love for different people in so many different ways. But childhood friends to lovers, just like, I also just think that like love can change and grow and morph. And a lot of times the thing that's holding them back is like, oh, it's going to ruin the friendship. It's like, maybe we should just be adults.
Right.
Like, you know, maybe we should just like, we try it. If it doesn't work, like, hello, we can back it up. Like, we can do something else. And that's also assuming that a romantic relationship is above a friendship somehow, which is just not true, right?
Because we could get into like, it's a romantic relationship more than a platonic relationship.
Right. And I think every relationship, if it has romantic, sexual, platonic, whatever qualities to it, has its own merit and value, and it creates like the whole, like, if you look at it like a pizza pie, you have all different kinds of love and you slot different people into different categories and like they can shift into new positions. And like, I think being a little bit more open-minded in those levels. So I think that's why childhood friends to lovers is hard for me because it's like, you're assuming that being in this relationship is probably going to mess it up and that's what's keeping you away from each other. And also that like, the end goal has to be a romantic relationship. And I just don't think that's true. This is maybe a hot take, but I also think like they're not childhood friends to lovers, but like I love When Harry Met Sally, but I don't think they're going to last after that final scene. Like I don't think Harry and Sally, which, you know, again, I don't know how Nora Ephron wrote it or what she assumed for them at the end, but I just think that like, I'm like those two people, like, they've been.
And a happily for now is totally fine.
I really love a happily for now.
Yeah.
And I think that more writers are exploring them, especially in like when characters are in their early 20s and early 30s, or there's coming of age element.
Right. Right.
And just because that relationship ends doesn't mean it wasn't important.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean it didn't teach you something. Doesn't mean you can't have a new version of that relationship moving forward.
Yeah.
I don't know. There are just so many cool and exciting ways to be in a relationship with a person and to like share vulnerability that trope just has never sat right with me, except for A Love Like the Sun, which I really love.
Yeah.
But
Love Like the Sun was beautiful. I think I cried like 100 times reading it. It was great.
I think there's just like so much baked into that story. And I do think that those two characters weren't like, we don't have feelings for each other. They were just like extenuating circumstances that were like,
we're just going to keep extending this.
We're going to keep extending. And like, they kind of were in a relationship the whole time. Like, it read like a traditional romance novel without that trope.
Right.
And then they were like, wait, we're kind of already doing it. So maybe we're just going to keep the relationship as it is, but we're going to add a label.
Right.
Which I thought was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was such beautiful stuff. Yeah. So beautiful.
So everyone read
A Love Like the Sun.
Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm sometimes on TikTok at Timothy Janovsky. You can find me on my website, timothyjanovsky.com. I have a newsletter there. I don't send a ton of newsletters, but I always update it when there's a sale or a new book or a cover reveal. And I always tell you what I'm reading or watching at that time. So I love to post that out there so that if other people are also engaging with the same media I am, we can have a little back and forth.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Timothy, for coming and chatting with us. Romance Unleashed. Follow us on Romance Unleashed Pod on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.